Great.
Okay. All right. So we'll just kind of go through, this is me, right, Diana?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll go through some of the expectations for Clinical One. And again, thank you all for agreeing to host our students. It's a very valuable role for our students in their learning. So the goals of Clinical One are for students to become prepared to assume the full range of teaching responsibilities. So it doesn't mean that they're going to be taking on the full range during Clinical One, but over the course of the year-long experience, they will be. So this is achieved by spending 15 or more weeks in a classroom while also attending a weekly seminar to support their development. Um, and so some of the responsibilities in the Clinical One is to build relationships with you, with the students, with other school personnel. Sometimes students are working with more than one teacher, so maybe with the other teacher. During this experience, especially in the beginning, they're going to be doing a lot of observing and reflecting. So they'll be thinking about learning processes and student behaviors, family and community influences. And they'll start doing some teaching in the first semester through co-teaching, co-planning. They can help out with assessments. They will be leading some instruction, but those responsibilities will build and grow as the semester goes on. And we definitely want them to engage professionally in the school community and demonstrate inclusive dispositions. If students are getting their special education certification as well as gen ed, we encourage them to, be able to participate in IEP meetings and attending other things that will help that knowledge base as well. Um, there's a lot more detail in the Cooperating Teacher website and handbook on this. So we think of clinical practice as a collaborative experience between the full team. So we have the intern, we have you, who truthfully they spend the most time with, they learn from the most. We have their seminar instructors who meet with them weekly in a group and they debrief on the experiences and do assignments related to the experiences. And then they have the university mentor who you will work in collaboration with as well, who comes out to the schools and does observations throughout the year. Um, and then you have us here at Montclair State. We are considered the TLRN clinical team, and we help make sure the placements all make sense for the students. We help troubleshoot any issues. We help make sure that the content of the syllabus and seminar is appropriate, and so on and so forth. And so here's a little bit more detail of each of the roles of the people. So the CT is the on-the-ground mentor, providing day-to-day guidance, modeling effective teaching practices, facilitating reflective conversations.
Oops,
Oh,
sorry.
it's okay. And assisting the intern to gradually take on more responsibility. The mentor supports and guides you through observation, coaching, or the intern through observation, coaching, and advocating, bridging field experiences with our university program expectations. And so during the first semester, they will arrange in collaboration with you two observations and though during those observations, the students will be teaching a lesson and they should be having the primary role of the main teacher during those observed lessons. And then the seminar instructors bridge the academic preparation and classroom experiences by helping the interns connect theory to their practice. They also serve as a resource for interns and they offer clarification, encouragement, and guidance as things arise. So
We,
yeah, go
Mhm.
ahead. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
would say we mentioned this previously, but just thinking about where we're moving the students through the process each month, through the gradual release process. So making sure that they're starting with some intentional observations, moving into co-teaching, and then choosing an area, a period, a subject to take over planning and teaching.
Yeah, so these are the main roles in Clinical One that the students will be engaging in. Especially in the early weeks, it's going to be a lot of observing and trying to have the students understand the dynamics of the classroom, understand how the students relate to each other, to you, and they'll have some targeted observation um, focus points from seminar instructors. This is a great time for them to start assisting you with core teaching responsibilities, reflecting on what they're seeing and what they're learning, to learn your planning process, to understand how the school, curriculum works, and then, beginning to increase their teaching responsibilities over the course of the semester. So there's quite a few differences between Clinical One and Clinical Two. So Clinical One is 175 hours. So usually students are there 2 full days a week. They log hours in the placement count and the students themselves or the interns themselves log their hours in Anthology. And then you will approve it. People have different processes for logging into Anthology, but working with the intern on that process is a good idea. Um, so the goals of Clinical One are to prepare, teach, and assess a minimum of 2 lessons, and participate in observations and meetings with the CT and university mentor, and also observe in other classrooms, speak with school staff, engage in the school community as much as possible, maybe go to after school events, anything like that. And then the things that you're responsible for submitting as the cooperating teacher is the midpoint check-in, where you're assessing the intern's performance at the midpoint of the semester, and then a final assessment of their performance over the whole semester, which both you and the mentor will be completing, and then a final recommendation. So basically, me and we have a team here who will be entering the ultimate grades and compiling all of the data that is submitted from both you and the mentor. And a final determination will be made based on all of those data points about whether they passed or not. And so, most students are fine, but there are always issues. If you're concerned about an intern's progress, we'd love to hear before it gets too late. It's really great for us to be able to work together as a team proactively rather than reactively when things get really bad. So if you have any concerns at all, we have a great team. We often meet with CTs to talk through issues. Diana is sometimes out in the schools, so she can possibly come and see what's happening. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, Diana's amazing about that. So,
Anytime.
yeah, so if you have any concerns that come up, please, reach out to us, let us know, and we are your partner in making sure the students are getting what they need out of this experience. So, this is still me. Um, so, the 175 hours comes from a state requirement. Some of them will exceed those hours, especially if they really don't have absences and are there throughout the whole period of time and 2 days a week. They are encouraged to think of Clinical One as being a part of the community for a set amount of time and not counting hours. So they really should be there for 2 set days per week with minimal absences. Um, did you want me to?
Oh, sorry. Mhm.
That's okay. I just didn't go through the bottom part. So other things that can be part of their hours would be working directly with you, the students, parents, or other personnel, preparing for class, when they're actually at the school, assisting you with lessons, grading, researching, writing things up, designing materials, technical assistance, and assisting or attending school events outside hours, outside regular school hours. Okay. So attendance for clinical one, so they will finish on May 8th, and they will attend until that date, regardless of whether the 175 hours have been reached already. So some of them may hit it quite a bit earlier, but they still need to stay through the semester. They should be there the same 2 days each week. They shouldn't be changing things around a lot. That consistency is really important for you, for the students, and for the interns. They're required to attend for the whole school day, even coming in early when you arrive or staying, for prep is a good experience for them too. And they will be tracking their own hours, and then you will be verifying those hours. Okay. So, there are, of course, acceptable reasons for students to miss days. Um, so one is if they're sick, we don't want them to be around kids and spreading germs, or if someone they care for is sick, if they have a family emergency for religious observations or for bereavements. Um, they don't have to report school holidays, like your holidays, to us. Um, eh, o- or Montclair State sanctioned events as absences. If there are extreme circumstances where they're out for a while, then they really should be talking with you and with us about the situation. The things that should not be a reason for missing a clinical day is for interviews, for jobs, for a family vacation, or that they have days left in the semester's ending, whether they're done with their hours. So it is important that if there are patterns of students missing a lot of days that we become aware of that so we can again handle that before it becomes a problem. So. So, this kind of like what Diana said earlier, this could in itself be a whole huge long PD I mean, this can be an entire course, but briefly, it can be really great. Some of you might be very familiar with the co-teaching models already. These come out of the work of Marilyn Friend. Um, and, we have some resources we can share if you're interested in learning more, if you don't know a lot. But these can be really great ways to think about how to collaborate with a new clinical intern, and making sure that they're maximizing their role in the classroom. There's actually out of St. Cloud, they have a whole clinical intern co-teaching professional development module. So this is actually a model used in student teaching or clinical internships across the country. So these are just a quick overview of the co-teaching model. So we have one teach, one observe, which means that one person's teaching. Probably in the beginning of clinical one, that means you and the students observing. But they have a targeted observation focus. So maybe you really want to collect some data on a particular student or on how the students are doing in a group project or during group work. And so you could ask them to collect targeted data. Um, One teach, one assist is another one that may be used a lot during clinical one. So the one teacher, which would be you, has the primary instructional responsibility, while the other one moves around and helps students with their work or helping them correct their assignments and maybe helping with group work. Station teaching can be a really effective um, way to get students to work in smaller groups, to break down more complex information into smaller tasks. And if you have a third adult, like an aide in the classroom, I've seen, those other adults also leading stations. So you might be able to have three or even four adult-led stations where you're dividing up the content and students are focusing on a specific part of that content in a small group, and they can rotate through the stations. It works really great in elementary classrooms. It's a great way to add hands-on learning, higher communication rates between the adults and the students, and it's a great way to use our clinical interns. Parallel teaching is where you would split a group in two, and you might each take your own lens of a content area. So maybe you both have like different expertise, or you divide up a lesson, and then you can switch the so then the students would get both people to hear, or you can do this by each person is taking half the class and teaching a full lesson. And again, it really reduces the student to teacher ratio. And it helps, the students feel like they have more connection to the educator. Um, Supplemental teaching, I always think that some of these need to be used a little bit less often, but they can have moments where they're really useful. So this strategy allows a teacher to work with students at their expected grade level, while the other works with students who would be benefit from having additional learning opportunities for enrichment or for extra support. Um, so this might be like maybe you have a group of 5 students who are just really not quite at the level that you want them to be at for the particular lesson, and you want them to focus on some prerequisite skills. Again, I think this should be used minimally because we don't want to start pulling the same kids out all the time, and it should only be used when we know we have data to support that group of students really needs targeted interventions. It could also be used for enrichment. If a group finishes early, we can pull them to the side and do, an expanded lesson. Alternative teaching provides two different approaches for teaching the same information. So the outcome is the same, the content is the same, but the instructional methodology might be different. And then team teaching is just really where both educators stand up together in front of the classroom and they bounce off of each other. Or maybe one is writing on the board while the other is talking, and those roles can be switched. If the teachers work well together, that can be a really fun dynamic for the students as well. Okay, so a little bit about lesson plans and our expectations. So, we want our interns to plan thoroughly in advance for every lesson that they teach. So I want to make this gets confusing. Our interns get confused by this, our cooperating teachers get confused by this. We have an MSU template, which I'm going to very briefly show you in the next slide. This template is far more extensive than possibly the one that you use on a daily basis. The reason that we use this really extensive lesson plan for the lessons that the students are being observed by their mentor on is because it really scaffolds them through the planning process in a really in-depth way, aligned to our inclusive values, really thinking about differentiation and meeting all students' needs. But we also understand that this is not the template that they'll be using for every lesson, especially as they start teaching more and more. So we don't mind that the interns use whatever lesson plan format and template that you use in your classroom, in your school, for the kind of the everyday lessons they're teaching or working with you on. But when they're doing their observed lessons, they must use our template. So I just want to make that clear. Um, and they should also be sharing their lesson plans with you ahead of time and keeping all lessons and planning materials in a place where you can both, easily share them as well as with the mentor, because the mentors will have to read through the lesson plans as well. Um, I think do you want me, I don't know if it makes sense to go through all of this right now, but
Yeah, this is just the template, which we'll, share with you in the slides so you're aware of what they'll need to do. And finally, we just wanted to share a little bit about subbing in the placement. So this question comes up a lot. And basically, the message is clinical interns cannot really be used as substitutes. In the past, there have been some times where MSU has been a little bit flexible with districts and emergencies, for example, during COVID times. And so I know some of that knowledge has persisted over time and caused a little bit of confusion. So the clinical interns need to be focusing on their internship, and they can't be used as substitutes when they're in the role of student teacher. And so that means when they're in this, in the placement for those 2 days a week in the fall, and then or excuse me, in clinical one, and then in clinical two, when they're there 5 days a week, they can't be used as a sub during that time. And it's important to note that the interns cannot be put in charge of students in a classroom alone. Unless they're being paid as a sub, but we really don't want them to do that. So there always needs to be a licensed teacher with the intern. Now, with that being said, they can teach the lesson if you're out, if they're ready to do that, but there just needs to be um, the licensed sub in the classroom with them. Additionally, if you have a co-taught classroom and let's say your co-teacher is out, the student teacher cannot, be the second teacher in the room. The same applies. They are not the licensed teacher yet, so there still needs to be a substitute for that second teacher in the room so that the intern can remain in the intern role. Just some scenarios that come up. So if the cooperating teacher calls out sick and a sub is assigned to the room, the intern can run the class and the sub can be present if you feel that the intern's ready to do that. And this is a typical intern activity, not subbing. Or if there's an aide who monitors hallways and lunch and they're out and the intern's asked to help with that, yes, the intern can occasionally do that. That's an intern activity, not subbing. But the majority of their time really needs to be spent on instruction and doing instructional work. Honorarium. So we thank you so much for your work with our student teachers. Cooperating teachers do receive a small honorarium of $550 for the entire year. So that's for 2 semesters. If your intern has multiple CTs, that is prorated and different formulations. But essentially, you will get that honorarium at the end of clinical two. So if you're in this room, that means that your honorarium will be issued next January. So when your students complete clinical two, then your honorarium will be processed in January, and you will get information about that from the clinical internship email. The MSUNER is an organization that exists at Montclair State University. Many of you may be familiar with it. There are lots of opportunities and benefits for you in workshops. They also have a program whereby you can become a clinical faculty. So you take 3 professional development courses, and then you can gain clinical faculty status, get an ID, have access to the library and parking and things like that, and other opportunities. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us or Kristen Armato, who heads up that program. So we wanted to offer that opportunity for you. And finally, we just wanted to end with some important dates. These are also in the clinical handbook, which is linked on this slide. And again, we'll send it out. But just noting that your university mentor should be visiting your classroom to do their observation between February 9th and the 23rd. And that the last day of clinical is May 8th. So a lot of important dates here. And we just want to say thank you so much for being here.